everybody. Welcome to Wednesday and the Garage and the Court of Public Opinion. Jeremy Cordeaux and Peter Clayton behind the camera. Pete, who was that who took the show out yesterday? Who did you pick to play that music?
Dan Seals.
I couldn't pick him. There was no...
He wasn't big in Australia, but he had some beautiful stuff.
Not Seals and Croft?
No. No, Dan Seals.
I've never heard a southern accent as strong as that.
Yeah.
That was really something.
Yeah.
I love Americans, I really do.
So do I.
Yep. Speaking of America, it looks like Japan wants to join AUKUS. But yeah, look, Pete just put his thumbs up. Well, I say the more the merrier. But AUKUS, what would it be? JAWKUS.
Why not?
JAWKUS. JAWKUS? Anyway, I reckon they would be welcome. They are a well-advanced country in technology. They have a sophisticated defence industry. And it'll annoy the hell out of China. But what about the other, what do they call them? Five Eyes? The Five Eye countries, there's Canada and New Zealand. Why not put them in as well? I think that would make sense. Comments on my criticism of hairy-chested border protection against fruit fly, which I ran the other day. Where do I start? Well, look, I'll just read this. Jeremy, that's me. There are lots of signs along the road well before you come to the border, telling people to ditch their fruit before they get to the border. The law is the law. Look, all right, I get it. And thank you for that. I get it. But the whole expensive tourism exercise, because that's what it was about the present and future promotion of South Australia. Now, to the guards, I say, get on board. Take any fruit and bin it. Your job on the border is to help protect the state and to facilitate this promotion. But I suspect nobody told you that. They may think that this is to raise revenue. Yeah, I think that could be a reasonable assumption.
Well, I think if they wanted to fine, I think $100 would be more than enough.
$400 they were fining people.
That's ridiculous.
No, I totally agree with you. No, we don't know what this gather round actually cost the taxpayers of South Australia, but it's all about tourism. Anyway, this is just my opinion, and we're all entitled to an opinion. Things are happening on the electric vehicle front. This sort of took my fancy, tickled my funny bone. This big new electric car company, Jiang, or whatever it's called, something like that, they're in trouble. Big trouble. Their latest Gee-Whiz car, which I'm told is just amazing, failed the compulsory crash test. It seems that the crash test dummy wouldn't get in the car. Boom, boom. You don't have a boom, boom to put in there, do you? Oh, dear, oh, dear. It really does take my fancy. The crash test dummy wouldn't get in the car. That's not a good sign. It's a really bad sign. Mount Etna has erupted again. This is no joke. It's burbled along or bubbled along for centuries. Anyway, it's interesting to notice this. Mount Etna puts out more emissions in 4 days than produced in 12 months by Australia, a whole country. Huh? You won't hear that on the ABC. Or Extinction Rebellion, or whatever they call themselves, Greta Thunberg, or our Minister for Climate Change, that fool Chris Bowen. Why don't they all just go and chain themselves to the volcano? Glue themselves to it Please, for God's sake, understand the real changing world in which we live. Hard to fathom some days, isn't it? Hard on the heels of the indiscriminate slaughter of the wild horses of the New South Wales Highlands, which we were talking about on Friday around the dining room table live streaming. Hard on the heels of that slaughter, it was for their own good, of course. Oh yes, that's why they did it. It was for them. Well, today marks the beginning of the duck season. I won't be happy with that until they arm the ducks. It seems a little one-sided to me. And I don't know what you think of horse racing. What do you think of horse racing, Pete?
Well, personally, I'm against it.
What, all of it, or just the jumps racing?
I think all of it. They're pushed to the limit.
Yeah, well, I guess that's true. And big money is involved, which is probably the root of all evil. But this story about the daughter of Winks is interesting. Winks, who won just about every race that she was in, certainly her last 33 races in a row, 4 Cox plates, I think. Winks sadly lost her first foal, but this beautiful looking yearling looks to be very promising, this new young lady. But you can never be sure. The pedigree can be perfect. On paper, a horse can be an absolute champion, a sure thing. But it's still a huge gamble. The record was for the half-brother of Black Caviar, who sold for $5 million. And then, out in the paddock one day, sadly, died from a spider bite. Who could predict that? Now, the daughter of Winks has sold for this remarkable amount of money, $10 million. $10 million. But then you put it in perspective with the sale of that Superman comic I was telling you about Monday or Tuesday, which sold for $6 million.
I'd rather have the horse.
I'd rather have the horse. But anyway, $10 million is an all-time record for a yearling. But still an enormous punt. But if you're in that industry, punting's in your blood. Do you believe it? There are people challenging, questioning the legality of the curfew in Alice Springs, which, as we record today's program, I hear will be extended for at least a week. Another week. Now, there are many people who want this measure to continue, indefinitely maybe, which is fair enough. But someone will apparently spend money, lots of money, to challenge what is, number one, necessary, and number two, popular. In fact, many, as I've said, want it to be indefinitely extended. The activists have for years played the system in the courts, whether it's land rights or something else, played it like a violin at public expense. They want to take the Northern Territory government to court to put these feral children back to rampage on the streets of Alice Springs, terrorise the township. There are hundreds of other towns in outback Australia in the same boat. Moree is another hotspot. Catherine wants this curfew. Well, they should have the right to impose it. There are lots of towns waiting and watching so that they too can implement a curfew. Sad that they have to resort to that. But you can't let these people terrorise an entire community. The gap that seems to, well, people obsess about the gap, but the gap no one seems to talk about is the common sense, good parenting gap. which I think deep down would fix this entire problem. What's happening at the moment, of course, is all of that has been removed from the streets of Alice Springs and is now wandering around the suburbs of surrounding streets. You see, the curfew only extends to the township of Alice Springs. It's a big problem, ladies and gentlemen. You know, the Walker Group, which is really huge, they've done a lot of work here in South Australia, the Walker Group, they are proposing a large 60-hectare housing development in Moreton Bay, near Brisbane. It's a lovely area. The strange problem is that despite the huge demand for housing that they constantly talk about, if they're not talking about the cost of living, they're talking about the demand for housing, the Environment Minister, Tanya Plibersek, has telegraphed that she won't allow this development to proceed. Why? Well, this is interesting. This development is planned for wetlands. Well, so close to the wetlands, it doesn't matter. Home of birds, dugongs, other significant wildlife. I wonder if the minister ever talks with other environmentalists. Well, she's the Minister for the Environment. I'm assuming she's an environmentalist. I wonder if she talks to the climate warriors in her party. Does she know or even care that wetlands, marshes, deltas are environmentally the worst contributors to emissions? Wetlands produce methane. Methane is the worst greenhouse gas in the world. What a conflict. What a double standard. If these clowns were serious about emissions and the housing shortage, this proposed development would get an immediate thumbs up. But they can't grasp. Wetlands, oh, that's nature. No, it's methane. Methane is dangerous. You don't get it, do you? No one will tell you, and you're too stupid to even ask. It's amazing. One of our sponsors, the wonderful Rising Sun Inn on Bridge Street at Kensington. Have a talk to Grant. He's there. Well, whenever I drop in, he's there. So, you know, I don't drop in all the time, but I get the feeling that he lives there. And I don't blame him. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place. Very old, built back in 1845. Handmade bricks, lots of exposed timber, open fires, 5 different areas. So it doesn't matter whether you want a romantic dinner for 2 or you want to have an office celebration, wedding, anniversary, reception. Look, have a talk to Grant on 8333 0721. And if you're listening to me somewhere else in the world, the Adelaide area code is 08. And 61. Pete, Australia is 61, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's 61 in front of that. Not that you need, if you're listening to this or watching this in New York, as people do, not that you need to make a booking. You wouldn't get here in time for lunch. But anyway, if you do come to Adelaide or you are a resident of Adelaide, you'll just love the Rising Sun Inn on Bridge Street at Kensington. Lots of atmosphere. There's a mandatory supermarket code of conduct being brought in, or, well, being brought in, maybe that's not the right way to put it, being proposed. Former Trade Minister and Bob Hawke staffer has come up with this. There was apparently a voluntary code of conduct in the past. A voluntary code, which seems strange. Why would anyone behave himself if it was a matter of choice. But if this is a good idea for Coles and Woolworths, I mean, I haven't seen what the voluntary code was, and I don't know what the mandatory code is proposed. But if it's a good idea for Coles and Woolworths, or Wokeworths, because of their market size, their power, there are others, you know, that it could be applied to quite reasonably. Bunnings, for example, they have 70, and Coles and Woolworths between them have got 70% of the supermarket business. Bunnings have 75% of the hardware business all to themselves. So there's Bunnings, there's Costco, there's Chemist Warehouse, and probably the biggest retailer of all, which is Amazon, worth tens of billions of dollars. Now you've got to be fair. If market size and influence and power is a problem, you know, apply your mandatory code of conduct to everybody, if you would. Am I out of time, Pete?
We're getting there, Jeremy.
Let me tell you a little bit about this. Well, I regard it as a continuing death spiral for the NDIS, which when the Liberals came in a few elections ago, they never should have continued with. The Minister, this is Bill Shorten, the Minister has announced that NDIS will employ another 3,000 people to put it back on the rails. Well, Bill, how did it get off the rails under your watch? Huh? Is there no end to this nonsense? But do you believe it? There's actually a discussion as to whether or not NDIS providers should be registered. Wow. Why are they even talking about it? 186,000 providers are unregistered, unknown, unqualified, unaccountable people, and we pick up the bill, and all Bill Shorten can do is to employ another 3,000 people to put it back on the rails. They're actually discussing this. People who can perhaps make no other decision in their lives want to be able to decide who and what services are provided, and at public expense. And this is not even means tested, ladies and gentlemen. You could be a multi-billionaire if for no other reason this government should get kicked out because of this NDIS debacle. How could anyone pretending to have an ounce of economic nous wisdom put up with this? The NDIS continues to expand, the costs out of control. It is a disgrace. I would even question why Bill Shorten should not be held criminally liable for this enormous waste of money. Somebody has to be. And this, which I think is scandalous, as reported by the Melbourne Age newspaper yesterday, a well-known serial sex offender has been provided with a $1.4 million package, that's $1.4 million a year, which involves a special high security apartment, 24-hour surveillance and staff, your taxes at work, ladies and gentlemen. What has this man's depraved proclivities got to do with us? Are you telling me a desire to kidnap and rape and a long history of same is a disability? This is insane. I mean, you can go Google the Age and Google up this story. I mean, I won't read the whole damn thing to you, but it's incredible. Who at the NDIS decided that a serial sex offender qualified for a $1.4 million taxpayer-funded disability package? It's beyond belief, and I might say, too, beyond tolerance. Mind you, I don't hear anything coming out of the opposition. Well, why weren't they all over that yesterday? No idea in the world. Bizarre. Ah, dear, oh dear, oh dear. Now, what can I tell you about the day, which is the 10th? 1912 was the year. This was the day when RMS Titanic set sail from Southampton on her maiden and final, one and only voyage. Paul McCartney officially announces the split of the Beatles in 1970. The first law regulating copyright is issued in Great Britain, 1710 on this day. Richie Benaud, I should say, Australia's cricket all-rounder and captain. He dies of cancer at the age of 84 on this day in 2015. The US patent system was formed. That's interesting. Copyright started in Britain, 1710, and the US patent system started on this day in 1790. What else can I tell you? Sheb Wooley was born. Do you remember Sheb Wooley, Pete?
He did funny songs, didn't he?
He did funny songs.
Yeah.
The Purple People. Was it the Purple People Eater?
I don't know what he did, but
I know the name. Golly, yeah. The invention of the safety pin, patented in America by Walter Hunt on this day in 1849. Elvis Presley was born. Whoa. Vernon Elvis Presley, that's Elvis's dad, was born 1916. Isaac Hayes won an Oscar for the best original score from the movie Shaft in 1972 on this day. P.T. Barnum Circus opened in New York, 1891 on this day. Glenn Miller's orchestra recorded Little Brown Jug, 1939. Michael Curtiz died in Los Angeles. The movie director who won an Academy Award in 1943 for his production of Casablanca. 1962 was the year. Omar Sharif was born. Max van Sydow was born in 1930. American table tennis team arrived in China. The first US group to penetrate the bamboo curtain since the 1950s. That was this day in 1971. Ping-pong diplomacy, I suppose you'd call it. Something like that. Karen Jones was born, Karen Jones married Aaron Spelling on this day in 1953. Paul Theroux was born, author, 1941. And we'll leave it there, I think. Martin Denny was born. Does that name ring a bell, Pete?
No.
Martin Denny had a great song called A Taste of Honey. A Taste of Honey. He was born in 1921. I remember Taste of Honey. Thank you so much for being with us. Don't forget to join us on Friday when we live stream from the dining room table, 9 to 12, jeremycordeaux.com. I'll be back with Peter Clayton tomorrow and a lot more stuff. Have you got a song?
Yeah, I thought I might put that James Blunt song on for you.
Okay.
Like the one with the horses.
The one with the horses. Is it going to get through and not be scrapped?
Well, we'll wait and see.
All right. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. Believe in yourself. Thank you for viewing the Court of Public Opinion.